Out of all MIDI articulations, if I dare say, velocity is the most important MIDI articulation used in live performance, I would say. So why is that? Well, imagine if this keyboard we are playing on made every note the same intensity. So no matter how hard we pressed it, it made every note the same velocity. So any expression for somebody who actually plays the keyboard and expects some responsiveness from that keyboard, as translated like from a piano or something. So they expect something to happen when they press it lightly, and also they expect a different kind of response from the keyboard when they press it with the stronger intensity for each one of these. And as you can see in most of these VST instruments, for all of the patches constructed, velocity has some influence, and that is really intended for people who actually play them. Now, we can use this in a piano roll, of course, for many good and different reasons, but people who actually play the keyboard, this is a very important part of performance. So as you can see, for this specific patch in Serum, there is a big difference on how I actually press these keys. Is it light or is it heavy? How is my expression? And you can even track the firmness of my pressure. So you can even track how hard I'm pressing the notes on this actual curve right there, on this transfer curve. And I can change that curve, of course. So now when I press it lightly, it's actually going to create this connection it has to expression, and I can show you what that is. So velocity is used as the auxiliary source to envelope 2, affecting the filter cutoff. So we have the envelope 2 affecting the filter cutoff maximum amount if the velocity is at maximum. If velocity is at minimum, this envelope does not affect cutoff at all, the way I've made this curve right now. But what they actually did in this preset is raised it up, making sure that even at the lowest of pressures in velocity, this envelope still affects the filter at least half of the potential. You see half of this maximum potential right here. So half of this intensity is going to happen even at the lightest touch of keyboard. Now if I lower that, so I could in theory make that transfer curve more extreme than they did, but what I actually wanted is not to completely remove any note that you press slightly. They just wanted that note to sound softer, which is less cutoff frequency, and I've shown you that example in what I did in lessons before. So let's check that out now. Now, if we record something like that, let's see what we are going to get in a recorded patch just like that, like this. Now, if we take a look at this MIDI clip that I just recorded, you can see all these velocities recorded just the same. Now, what I can do in piano roll, and what's really good about MIDI, is that I can change these velocities recorded by me playing the keyboard after the fact that they were recorded. So nothing is set in stone. With actual MIDI, we can change these. So I can actually do that. I can change some of them if I don't like the way they're played, that they're really strongly played notes. Change some others to be stronger, so with higher velocity settings, and I can actually mingle those after the fact of what I did. Now, what we could also do is actually select all of these notes by pressing Ctrl A, like that. Now they're all selected, and I could take all of these velocities and bring them down a tad bit, or actually pull them all the way up. making them equal, essentially. So now I'm losing all the expression, but maybe that is what I wanted. So imagine you record something and you don't actually want any of that velocity change. Well, you can remove it by just equalizing these velocities yourself, selecting all, pulling them upwards, and then pulling them down to a selected value. Now they are all equal. Of course, I could have done that by just detaching the velocity as auxiliary source for this change, like that. So now whatever I do, however much hard I press the keyboard or soft, and you will see on the graph right here that the velocity does change. So even with different velocities, nothing happens because that's the way it's mapped in the synthesizer. So velocity doesn't affect anything. Now I can bring it back. Let's say velocity right there. So as you can see, velocity helps the keyboard player or you writing notes in the actual piano roll to get some kind of difference depending on the velocity. So for each note. Now, if you had to do that writing automation, you would have to write a really complex automation for each one of these notes that happens just while the note is playing and then going back downwards. So imagine a kind of automation that happens like this, even if it was an automation that's stepped out, like the draw one that happens when I press B, just like that. Like that's also okay. You could do this and have automation control this for you for each one of the notes differently. But isn't this easier? Now I can draw automation. Now I can draw velocities too using the pen tool. I can slide it off. I can turn it off and then just use this. Now this is a different setting of modulation for each one of the notes. And I can make velocity do anything, just as I can make any of these macros change anything, or any of the modulators change anything, mod wheel, whatever. So velocity is just one modulator more that actually is connected to how hard or soft we press these keys right here. So it's really beneficial to use for people playing the keyboard, also for us inside the software. And one of the basic examples might also be, let's say, having a snare sound. Let me find a nice snare. So this is my snare sound. I can play it. So let's say I wanted the drum roll, like a really nice drum fill to bring in the drop. So what I could do using the actual notes that I'm going to be writing is, let's say, do this, make a new MIDI clip, Control-Shift-M, or if I undo that, I can right-click anywhere in this upper portion right there and say Insert MIDI clip. Have the same result. So now I can go into that MIDI clip and let's say this is fast enough. Okay, write one note, duplicate it using Control-D or Command-D on a Mac, just like that, to duplicate this note. Maybe select all of them, duplicate those again, and again, and again, and again, like that. And now I have this. Let's say I want that faster, the next line. So I can densify this grid line. I can also do that by right-clicking here, setting narrowest or just narrow, which brings us to 1/8. So let's do that. Select all of the notes coming after, make them shorter, and I can do that by just holding Shift and using my arrow keys, left or right, left, right. You see, I'm just mangling the ending of the notes. So I can duplicate those, holding Control, copy. So now, from that point, middle point, they start being more dense in time. So they play twice as often. Now what I can do is just use my velocity to actually mangle the volume of these. So maybe use the draw mode, and just draw this. Like that. Okay, so now that I have that done, let's play it. And you see, I can change the volume of that snare by using velocity. Now, why does that happen, you might say? Because we didn't do anything here to actually make velocity affect anything. Well, the default setting in here is actually, you see, velocity to volume. So the default setting is 35%. So the velocity is going to affect the volume at 35% of its actual entire amplitude. If I make that 100%, let's see what happens now. So check out the velocity and what happens with the volume. So now the change is much more drastic. So you can actually, by default, affect the percentage of how much velocity affects the volume. That's just an integrated part of this sampler. And you might think, why don't we just have it on a filter or something? Well, that's the most logical thing to have it on. The harder you press the key, the louder the sound gets. The softer you press the key on the keyboard, the quieter the sound is. Just like that. So as you see, we can use velocity via hardware, just like that, and you can use it in the software to do something else. And I've shown you in the example before in a lesson that you can use it to control anything. So velocity can be mapped to control anything within, let's say, Serum. So you can use velocity to move your cutoff or maybe pitch, whatever you like. It's just a normal modulator like any other, but it is controlled for each note, which is really nice. So each note with MIDI transfers velocity with it. So once you send a note, you're sending its beginning and the velocity that comes with it. This is just how MIDI works. So with every note, you send the velocity value. And you might as well just use it, since that's a really, really neat functionality to have a modulator that's going to be affected for each one of the notes separately without you drawing automation in steps, as I've shown you before.